Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Marcellino and Tyson YouTube channel. My intro pretty much changes every single video because I haven't nailed that down yet. But my name is Matt Marcellino. I'm an attorney here at Marcellino and Tyson, and we handle a bunch of different legal practice areas: family law, business law, estate planning, civil litigation, and so forth. Today, we're talking about family law, and we are meeting again with Andria Marquez, who's an attorney here in our office, and she primarily handles family law. Our last video was about what is alimony and how to calculate it, and Andrea did a great job explaining the math behind it. But now we get to talk about, well, what other considerations, if any, does the court have or look into regarding awarding or denying alimony, right? So it's not just a math problem, right?
Right.
What else goes on?
In the last video, I talked about how the judge has discretion. And where does that discretion come from? Well, one of the things that a judge can look at is these factors that are laid out in the statute. The biggest one we see is marital misconduct.
Okay, so what is, I think I know what it sounds like. I think I know what it means, right? But what is marital misconduct? What's kind of enumerated in the statutes that might help us out?
So what we're talking about is usually adultery, right? So one spouse has a relationship outside of the marriage during the marriage, not after date of separation, but while the parties are still in an intact marriage. Okay. And what the statute says is that if the supporting spouse commits that marital misconduct, so back to our last video, they have to first be a supporting spouse. If they are a supporting spouse, meaning that they have that ability to pay, and they committed adultery during the marriage, the statute says they must pay alimony. If on the flip side, they're...
So let me cut you off for a second. So if the statute says they must pay, it's no longer discretionary to the judge?
That's right.
Okay, so the judge would have to award alimony in that circumstance if adultery was proven.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. All right. So then on the flip side...
On the flip side, if a dependent spouse has committed adultery, then the statute says they are barred from receiving alimony. They cannot be awarded alimony.
Gotcha. Again, no longer the judge's discretion. They're not allowed to award it. Okay. So when we're talking about infidelity and affairs, we're talking about obviously a sexual sort of relationship that occurs during the marriage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the question that I have, though, is what does the court do with it? So now they are required to award or deny alimony, right? With that information, what is the court also considering? So somebody's had an affair, and let's say it's been successfully proven in court, right?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about how it's proven? I think that's a question that a lot of people have is what does that mean? How would I actually prove that there was adultery during the marriage? And the legal standard is inclination and opportunity. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to show that there was some sort of relationship that was more than just a friendship, right? So maybe your spouse, you found text messages between your spouse and someone else and they're of an illicit nature. Or maybe you've hired a private investigator to have them followed and you see them going into a hotel. That would be really good evidence. Most of the time we don't have that, but most of the time we're looking at text message evidence or photographs of some sort.
But so what was the phrase, inclination and what?
An opportunity. Okay. So, they had the opportunity to have sex basically outside of the marriage.
But that sounds to me like it's more circumstantial. It's like, it has stripes, so it must be a zebra sort of scenario, right? Does that make sense?
Right.
So, because if we had text messages and they're admitting to their affair and they're talking in great detail as to what they've been doing, or there's videos and pictures and so forth, that's pretty much a slam dunk.
Yeah, that's pretty much going to do it.
But the opportunity and inclination, or inclination and opportunity, is more of circumstantial evidence that just says, like, everyone in the room's going, like, clearly there was an affair here.
Right.
We don't have to really dispute it anymore.
Yeah.
So it doesn't require text messages and photos and videos. It's just, again, lots of opportunities, and maybe there's a way to figure that out, such as, I don't know, the occasional work trip to the mountains and you get credit card statements, right?
Right.
Okay.
There's your opportunity and, your inclination maybe, that they had just more of a friendship. It's clearly something else going on here.
Okay. All right. So then now the judge has decided that infidelity and affair has occurred. What part of that, when does that play into their decision as to how much or how little or how long or how short to award alimony?
Yeah, so now they must make the decision to award alimony. And, judges tend to look at how egregious was it, right? How long was this affair going on? Some judges will look at that. And what was the position of the dependent spouse in that case? Mm-hmm. And, I've seen judges here in Mecklenburg County really punish someone for adultery. Mm-hmm. In that, we talked about the standard, or not the standard, but the rule of thumb is generally half the duration of the marriage. But I've seen recently a judge award the entirety of the marriage worth of alimony. So, for example, if they were in a 10-year marriage, then that's 10 years of alimony now because of the adultery. Gotcha. What we don't see is alimony that lasts forever. That's not something that most of our judges are doing or considering.
Right. It's not permanent.
Right.
It still has a time duration attached to it.
Exactly.
Okay. So then here's my next question for you, right? Let's say that the supporting spouse committed adultery and it was proven in court and the judge says you've committed adultery. Is there a circumstance in which maybe the judge doesn't award as much time or a dollar amount to the dependent spouse?
So sure, so alimony is now mandated, right? If the
so the judge has to award it,
right?
And the dependent spouse is going to get some amount of money,
but it's still discretionary. So and it's also still based on the financial ability of the supporting spouse to support the dependent spouse. Yeah. So if there is only back to the calculating of alimony, $1,000 a month of financial ability to pay, then that is all the judge has to be able to make the alimony awarded.
Yeah. In addition to other forms of marital misconduct, though, right? So like we've talked a lot about infidelity and adultery.
Yes.
And the supporting spouse, the husband, he had an affair, he's busted, right? Now. But there's circumstances, because there's other means of marital misconduct that the court can consider. The wife in this hypothetical could have just been a very mean person throughout the course of the marriage. And marital misconduct has a lot of itemized little bullet points essentially in the statute, and it's like just terrible person, mocked the husband in public, scolded him. But it's very egregious nature, right? It's not infidelity, but this spouse might have been just a terrible person.
Right. There are other types of marital misconduct.
Correct. It doesn't justify or negate the adultery, but the judge could look at the behavior of the wife during the course of the marriage and say, he had an affair, but I'm going to actually award less money and or time on alimony based on your conduct throughout the course of the marriage. Correct?
Right. And there's also, like, for example, if the wife in this situation condoned the affair or forgave the affair, maybe the affair was 10 years ago and the relationship continued after that, then a judge doesn't necessarily have to look to that affair to say alimony is mandated in this case.
Yeah, the condonation is it's like a get out of free jail card, right?
Right.
But the court, I just think everyone needs to understand that having an affair is not a slam dunk scenario where you're going to get the 20 years of alimony and it's going to be at a higher amount because the husband or the wife, whoever had the affair that is a supporting spouse, they're not being punished because it's not simply that the other spouse is still under the microscope. How did you handle yourself during the course of the marriage? Because that could be as a grounds for the judge to reduce, again, either the amount that's being paid or the time that it's being paid, right?
Absolutely.
So they're both being judged, for lack of a better word, right? But then condonation, right? So typically associated with adultery. What is condonation? What does that really mean?
Condonation is essentially, there was an affair, and it was, to use the same word, condoned, right?
Forgiven.
Forgiven, condoned. So that's why I was saying, like, if the affair was a couple years ago and, the spouse knew about the affair, they went to therapy maybe, they talked about it, and then that spouse forgave them for it, and they moved on in the relationship. And now they're separating, and, wife in this situation says, well, he had an affair, well, there's a defense to that, and that defense is the condemnation.
Right. So what happens if it's proven that the husband had the affair, but it's also proven that the wife forgave him for that affair prior to date of separation, right? What is a judge? What happens to a judge?
Yeah, it's as if it didn't happen,
right.
Essentially. It's no longer per the statute going to be, mandatory alimony.
Right. Everything goes back to the discretionary scales of justice.
Right. Then the judge can still consider it as a part of marital misconduct, but it's no longer, a situation where it bars alimony if it's the dependent spouse or mandates alimony for the supporting spouse.
Back to square one.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And it's the same, now that you're saying back to square one, another defense to it would be, well, what if both committed adultery? Then it's as if neither have. You're not pigeonholed into that statute.
Right. Both parties have done it, so we're back in the discretionary mode that the judge can use.
Exactly.
Okay, understood. Well, that was really helpful because it's not simply a math calculation, even though a lot of it is, right? Income minus the reasonable needs and expenses that you discussed in the last video. But there's more to it than that. And it's just tools that the court can use to determine, should I give more alimony or more time or less money or less time? Just depends upon how everyone behaved during the course of the marriage, right?
Right.
Okay, all right. Well, I think that's been very helpful. I appreciate the explanation. Again, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to one of our attorneys. But otherwise, we'll see you during our next video. Thank you.